Alrighty. So when did you know and how did you deal with it personally?
I guess maybe I was questioning the possibility of it later in my teenager years. But it didn't really affect me that much. I feel like I just kind of went with the flow with everything. And I was okay with that, and I am okay with that. And I'm pretty grateful to have that, knowing that that's probably an abnormal coming out story.
When I was 3, I didn't know what it was called, of course. I just knew that, that I was attracted to women at a really young age. When I was 3 years of age, I knew that, I knew that I was attracted to women. I didn't have language for that, of course, when you're 3 years old. But I've known my whole life.
I guess I sort of officially came out at about 16, but I reckon I probably knew pretty young. But again, I think squashed it for a really long time. I think, when you grow up in a society that's quite heteronormative, so man and woman usually or typically, you sort of, I guess, when you do have other feelings towards, the same gender in my case, it's something that you probably don't straight away accept.
I think within myself, when I was really young, sort of primary school, maybe a little bit early primary school, I think I was really comfortable with that. And then the realisation that it wasn't a cool thing, then I realised I had to put it away and had to try and be something else and hide that part of myself. So, that place where I was just very comfortable and then having to shut up shop and put it away and not be that thing. And so, I spent my teenage years watching all of my friends at school, go through a regular adolescence where you're exploring connection and intimacy and relationship with other people in a really authentic way, or as authentic as you can be when you're a teenager. But I wasn't able to do that.
Growing up, I think I came out to my parents and my brother when I was about 12. I think it was kind of like year 8 when all my friends started to have like all these crushes on boys. I was like, I don't feel the same, and started to, I guess, have crushes on some girls, and you're always like, it's a bit scary because you're meant to feel a certain way, but I didn't.
Yeah, I had boyfriends in high school and, kind of played the game and, I guess explored whatever attractions were there to boys and men, but it just never was genuine. And so but if I look back at my childhood, my high school years where I put that part of myself away it's probably the saddest part of my life, I'd say.
Was there a tipping point for coming out?
I think it was finishing high school. I think my peer group, my community was really homophobic, and we lived in the outer western suburbs at the time, and I'd lived there since I was, 7. And I was moving towards being 18 and being free of having to live at home with my parents and live in that community, and I knew that I was going to be able to move away from that place, and in moving away from that place that there was going to be freedom for that part of myself to come back to the fore.
The environment that I was in allowed me to do that as well, and I think that's the beautiful thing about women's football in particular, is that it was a bunch of people who were kind of like misfits or had similar stories, and it created this comfort and this environment that was so supportive, and yeah, I guess it allowed people to explore the different or non-binary ways of living.
My coming out story was my older sister sort of walked into my bedroom randomly one day, and I was in my bunk bed like having a cry, and I was just pretty inconsolable. And I remember she said, "Bree, what's going on? What's wrong?" And I was like, I sort of lied there crying. I said, nothing. And she's like, "No, tell me what's going on." And this is my older sister, somebody who was there for me no matter what, probably one of the most progressive people I know. And I was like, okay, this is obviously the moment. This is the right time to tell. So I just said, I think I've got a crush on a girl. And that's how I put it. I didn't straight away say I'm into women. I didn't say I'm into girls. I didn't say anything like that. Because I guess for me, again, in my own head, I was sort of partly, that little bit of shame was sort of keeping me from saying that. I didn't want to admit it to myself still. But I did come out, I guess, as having a crush or having a girlfriend. And my sister's sort of immediate response was like, so? I don't care.
Told my brother when I was in year 8, I think, similar thing, then told my mum, and then told Dad, and Dad had the best reaction. Basically walked into the lounge room with Mum, and Mum knew that I was about to tell Dad, and I told Dad, and he was watching probably the cycling on TV or something, just ridiculous. And I sat down, I was like, "Oh, Dad, like I'm gay." And he said, "Okay," and just kept watching the TV. And at the stage I was like, "Dad, come on, give me a bit more, like, do you want to know anything else?" I thought he would be disappointed, and he was not. He already knew, and he loved me no matter what. I guess knowing really young that I wasn't interested in guys, it was pretty easy to know that I was gay, and that I wanted to be my true self, and that, like, I didn't want to hide having a girlfriend from my family and my friends, and I was in a really safe, supportive environment, so I was able to come out early.
Moved to Melbourne when I was 18 and found a football team, and yeah, I guess I found a group of people that were just so like-minded and had such similar upbringings or had similar stories to tell. I guess it was comfortable.
There's always that fear of rejection, what if, you know, and I'd lived a life of rejection because I was such an androgynous kid, you know. I was never feminine enough, and I was never girly enough, and I liked to play footy, you know. I didn't like to do dancing and play netball, you know, and so because of this thing, it was constantly a source of rejection. And it's still a real challenge for me now in my life, is navigating that fear of rejection, because it was something that I just had my whole childhood, essentially, because of, I guess, my sexuality and gender expression. My dad's Turkish, and my grandmother's a very practicing Muslim woman, and you know, she's still alive now. And my partner and I go to her house, and she always is at pains to say to my partner, "You make sure you come over next time. You're always welcome. Come anytime." So I'm really fortunate in that way.
What ongoing challenges do you face?
I mean, I wear, you know, traditionally, you know, male clothes growing up, t-shirt, board shorts, whatever it was, had short hair. And I think it was that assumption that people have for you, that society has for you. I mean, I didn't care growing up, but as soon as the teenager years hit, I kind of didn't feel that comfortable, and I think not being accepted for who you are. dressing how you want or being how you want and not being accepted for who you are, I think that's pretty crushing. Like, I feel sad for my younger self, but I'm also grateful for what I've gone through, and the support that I've had along the way. Because, gosh, that would be so hard for people who don't have the support that they need, that they should have.
Yeah, I've definitely had moments in my life where I've been walking down, the street with my current girlfriend of the time, and someone would yell something out the window to you holding hands, like something just really, really disrespectful and homophobic, and that has happened to me before, and they're things that you do face. I read something in a book once, I think it's Growing Up Queer in Australia, I believe it was in that book, which is a really good book. And it has a lot of little different stories, but one person about, different queer people and their stories. But I think one of the things that resonated me within the book was someone had said that as a gay person, you do feel like you constantly have to scan a room to see if you're safe. And I definitely feel that. I definitely feel that no matter what environment I walk into, I sort of do need to sort of suss out what type of people are there, what environment it is it safe to be myself, do I need to pull it back a bit here, which again is sad because you sort of have to sort of mask who you are a little bit if you don't feel safe,
But you never stop coming out, it's just the reality. And every scenario, how you come out, and every scenario is different according to the context that you're in, workplaces, family, friends, university, your nieces and nephews, navigating that conversation. I've got a beautiful niece and nephew, and, having that conversation with my brother and my sister-in-law about, well, how do we come out to them? How do they learn about the fact that I date women and not men?
As soon as you start a new job or you meet new people, the first question is, do you have a boyfriend? And you always have that split second of, I guess, fear when you say, no, I have a girlfriend, of how they're going to react. Like, you don't know the people from a bar of soap, so you don't know their views and opinions on things. So you always have that split second, like, oh, if I say a girlfriend, are they going to respond differently?
You just don't know how different people are going to respond. I think society is so much more progressive now, but it hasn't always been that way, and there's still people that haven't quite jumped on the bus with that. Because
there always is that slightest bit of fear, and even walking down the street with the dogs holding my partner's hand, like sometimes you're like, oh, how are your neighbours going to respond to that? Or do you walk past someone and they double take you and it's just uncomfortable? So I think there's that little bit sense of fear when coming out, and just worried that how people respond, no matter how comfortable I've always been in this environment. Why is it important to have allies outside the LGBTQIA plus community? I think allies are super, super important in our rainbow community. A lot of my friends are straight and not involved in the rainbow community, but they absolutely love and adore me and are full supporters of the rainbow community. I think that's really special. I guess at the end of the day, everyone just wants to be happy and respected and loved. So it doesn't matter kind of what community you lie in, as long as like you are respectful to the other one and you show support. It's really important to see.
Oh, do you see a future where coming out stories are the thing of the past? Oh, I'd like to say yes. I just think globally there's so much work to be done around prejudice and discrimination in so many different ways, and the intersectional experience of people who are in the LGBTQI community. It's not just navigating homophobia or transphobia. It's it's navigating ableism, and it's navigating age discrimination, it's navigating racism and sexism, and like it's navigating all of that stuff on top of, because the experience, the intersectional experience of people in the LGBTQIA community makes all of our journeys quite unique. So it's just not that easy.
There's always going to be people who won't accept you for you, but I guess they're just not in your corner, and you got to find your own people.
I would love to see a world where my kids grow up and they don't have to tell me why they've chosen to love a certain gender, or feel scared to tell me that they love a certain gender or anything like that. Like, looking back, my dad's response of saying okay, it was the best response he could have given, because it just normalised the situation, and it just made you feel so comfortable, and it is just normal.
You can play a role in making things better for other people and influencing the person next to you, who then goes on to influence, and that's the opportunity, that's the legacy you can leave, that infinite leadership legacy, by how you choose to show up in the world. And if more of us do that more often, and we're really mindful of that, about how we choose to show up in the world, what's the community that we want people to be a part of, and if we actively choose a place that's free of discrimination in any senses, then we're half a chance of getting there sooner. But I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I think there'll be coming out stories for a very long time. And that's me.